morning. Dr. Deputy Executive Secretary of UNEC, Dr. Anthony Marley, Commissioner for Economic Affairs of the African Union Commission, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this important regional consultation on finance for development. I'd like to thank you all for taking time to come after this critical consultation. I would like to thank all institutions, UNEC and the African Union, for organizing this consultative meeting. Ethiopia is delighted to be hosting the Addis Ababa International Conference on Financing for Development in July 2015. We are looking forward to welcoming all to Addis Ababa to consider how global development should be financed in the post-2015 period. For Africa, we have the opportunity to establish clearly today for our ministers a set of recommendations that crystallize both Africa's own commitments as well as laying out our requests for the whole of the international community on how we will all finance global development in the post-2015 period. What will we all do in areas such as domestic resource mobilization, official development assistance, foreign direct investment, infrastructure and structural economic transformation, trade, and the international financial architecture? And how can the private sector help to deliver our goals in this regard? Ladies and gentlemen, when the government of Ethiopia was invited to partner with ECA and the African Union Commission in hosting this consultation, I was delighted to accept the opportunity not only to support the region in participating in this important process, but also to share some insights from Ethiopia as we reach the end of our first 5-year development strategy, which we call the Growth and Transformation Plan. Ethiopia's Growth and Transformation Plan is widely credited for the double-digit economic growth and the agricultural-led industrialization that will lead Ethiopia to become a billion-dollar economy in about 10 years' time, by 2025. The first insight reflects the principle of ownership, which emboldened us to choose strategically, according to our priorities, where resource mobilization would have the greatest impact towards structural economic transformation. We are focused on channeling resources towards infrastructure projects, human development, and investment in key agricultural sectors that lend themselves easily to industrialization, thus contributing to the economic transformation goal. We also undertook fiscal reforms in a number of areas to improve tax administration, broaden the tax base, and raise resources to meet socio-economic goals such as halving poverty and reducing child mortality by 2/3 ahead of the target. The lessons we have learned so far is to continuously increase domestic revenues and strategically allocate these resources to where they will generate the greatest return. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa can and should be setting the agenda for this meeting and delivering strong messages together, as well as influencing our partners to press for a productive outcome. Africa came together to develop the common African position on post-2015 development agenda and to speak with one voice in the SDG process. African countries are further integrally involved with this process, given that South Africa is now the chair of the G77, Benin is the chair of NEC's group, Morocco is chairing the Africa group, and Kenya is the co-chair of the SDG process, while Ethiopia is hosting the FFP conference in July. Not only do we have an opportunity because of the fortunate circumstances that have placed African countries in the lead of these groups, but we also have the moral authority, given our situation, to make suggestions and requests to our partners, both in the developed Africa clearly has special needs. More than two-thirds of the agencies are based in Africa. Despite significant growth in recent years in comparison to other parts of the globe, many challenges remain in Africa. Growth is not spread evenly, and unemployment remains high. African economies still remain largely underdiversified. In 2012, Africa accounted for just 3.5% of world merchandise exports. The UNCTAD estimated that countries in sub-Saharan Africa would need to invest $93 billion per year in infrastructure in order to meet their development goals, while actual investments are under $5 billion. NEPAD suggests that transport costs are 63% higher in Africa than in developed countries, hampering Africa's ability to trade. All of these issues are integral to the financing for development agenda, and we feel that this warrants special focus on Africa. We are keen, therefore, that we all need to press for a special Africa-related paragraph in the coming negotiation, covering infrastructure, clean energy, agricultural transformation, inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and gender equality and empowerment. What will enhance Africa's position even more in the discussions beyond our leadership in the respective EU groups and our moral authority is that we have the opportunity to demonstrate that it can be done, that it's possible to grow in a sustainable way, with the right financing for development. In Ethiopia, we recognize the importance of stable macroeconomic environment, rule of law, and the enabling environment for the private sector development. But with the political will and support of our partners, it's possible to grow in a sustainable way. And we encourage all countries to take up this challenge in the context of sustainable development goals and the financing for sustainable development agenda, to help demonstrate the case that Africa is determined to grow in the best way possible for its people. In our discussions today and in the coming months, we will build on the Montreal Consensus of 2002 that established a broad foundation for financing for development. And we will consider the themes highlighted in the Doha Conference. But we must recognize that the new XR report must be adapted to reflect the global trends that have been identified, as well as consider the combination of economic, social, and environmental factors that are needed to meet the new SDGs. It's critical that the XR report is not just a reiteration of what has not been achieved from Montreal and Doha, but that it's relevant to today's world and will remain so over the coming years. That is present logically and contains specific actions for all parties. So in that spirit, I have some recommendations and suggestions on what should be incorporated in our African common position on financing for development. Bearing in mind that the inputs from the EU system to date and our deliberations on the common African position on post-2015 development agenda. We want concrete and measurable commitments included in the outcome agreement, and language on both international and domestic actions, both public and private financing, as well as key issues such as trade, sustainability, and international governance. There should be specific reference and commitment related to Africa. Our suggestion is that this could include elements of financing inclusive and sustainable industrial development, structural economic transformation, agricultural quality and research, gender equality and women empowerment, as well as sustainable infrastructure and energy. In our own position in the curve, we should highlight that Africa has committed to act on financing for sustainable development, including domestic actions on domestic resource mobilization, tax evasion, addressing corruption, tackling illicit flows, and macroeconomic stability. We should also note that we reiterate each country's responsibility for for decision-making on the domestic environment. On domestic public financing, we recognize the critical importance of domestic resource mobilization for our growth and development. This should be reflected as a priority in the Addis Ababa report. We should strive to increase our domestic tax revenue while addressing the domestic policies and the environment to improve domestic savings and control corruption and criminal activity alongside tax avoidance and evasion, as well as transfer, mispricing that ultimately lead to revenue losses. We should call for developed countries to be included. We should call for developing countries to be included in international conversations on expanding international tax cooperation and greater sharing of information to address tax avoidance, tax evasion, corruption, money laundering, and illicit financial flows. We should call for international companies to report to tax authorities whether they make their profits and pay their taxes across the world. Donors should provide additional support in these areas. On international public finance, Ethiopia knows that ODA is critical to development, in particular for LDCs, and we know that most LDCs are based in Africa. Aid must be focused on those countries that need it most. ODA flows are not reaching the expected levels in recent years. More must be done to ensure existing ODA commitments are reached, and we should together press development partners and donors to meet their commitments of 0.7% ODA GNI. And we should press also to set a timetable to do so. Donors should also reverse the decline in support LDCs and meet the commitment of 0.15 to 0.2% ODA GNI. Recipients of aid should define their priorities in national planning processes, and donors should come in behind these using country systems, being predictable in their provision of resources, and being result-focused, transparent, and accountable. On domestic and international private financing, private resources have historically been a key driver of domestic growth and provision of jobs. The private sector is made up of many different actors, from smallholder farmers, individual households, through to companies and big banks. They behave differently and have different needs to succeed. However, the state can provide a strong regulatory framework and enabling environment for the private sector to thrive and play its expected role. Domestically, developments such as enhancing skills, knowledge, technology, access to capital, access to markets, and inclusive financing in particular for micro, small, and medium enterprises can help strengthen a weak private sector. The international community would expand its program of support for these developments. Africa also requires responsible and quality foreign direct investment to drive its industrialization and economic transformation. On climate change, given the impact of climate change and climate variability for economic growth and development, it's vital that financing of all types takes into account this potential change over time and engage in climate-proofing of investments. We should ask developing countries to provide and mobilize enhanced financial support to developing countries for ambitious mitigation and adaptation actions. On trade and investment, while a number of trade agreements have opened the doors for export for developing countries to other markets, it's evident that African countries are not able to make the most of the opportunities available. Africa's share of world trade is still a very low level. Beyond countries' domestic responsibilities, the international community can help develop national productive capacities of LDCs and African countries and also exploit these opportunities, trigger greater export regionally and internationally, and attract further investment. The needs in terms of sustainable infrastructure and energy support are huge. Greater focus on economic development and infrastructure and energy needs within ODA and concessional finance is a useful tool for public spending on sustainable development, as long as we avoid irresponsible borrowing and manage the debt very well. Creditors also have a similar set of responsibilities to avoid irresponsible lending, so where possible, alternatives should be considered. Some agencies require more flexibility on the amounts they can borrow at concessional rates. We should state that we won't see positive outcomes from the reviews by the IMF and the World Bank on debt sustainability restrictions. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of our views which we would like to see being reflected in our discussions and eventually in the outcome of it. Let me close by saying again that Africa is in an unprecedented position in these discussions, and we must take advantage of this opportunity to come up with an African common position on financing for development and to make our voices heard. I encourage all of us also to build the momentum from now towards a successful Addis Ababa Accord on financing for development conference in July 2015. I wish us a fruitful consultation and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency Dr. Tekeste. The message is really strong, and the message we want to remember this message throughout our deliberations here. Promoting Africa's development moving forward requires long-term development frameworks that promote investment in sustainable agriculture, economic transformation, and inclusive development at large. This is the only way for us to maximize benefits from resources we mobilize domestically or receive from external donors and partners. The GDP growth and transformation plan of Ethiopia is a good example of how long-term development visions and plan can really guide us to make better use of the resources we mobilize and to achieve our objective. I would like to thank the three speakers for their inspiring statements and move to the next agenda item, which is election of the Bureau. As I said before, we would like this meeting